next time I'm not going to go there. And those are the kind of areas of doubt that absolutely happen.
What happens when they treat it like that and it goes wrong? What does that look like when they do go for the lowest cost?
If you get under the skin of it, you can see, well, actually, some parts of that technology needs changing. Others might just need an extension to maintenance to make sure somebody's there to keep it going. And with that new technology, well, there's alternative options. It's not just brand new.
Communicate your value clearly. Can you get across the different stakeholders and articulate why it's important? So I think sometimes we forget that the buyers aren't always the ones that would feel the impacts if it goes wrong. So you've got to be able to articulate that more broadly.
Our mission is to keep technology connected. We're supporting some huge businesses. If something goes down, they could stop trading.
How do you approach that situation, and how do you kind of convince customers of the value?
We're two tech CEOs talking about navigating the speed of change in the technology industry. This comes from the impact of tariffs, changing supply chains, opportunities with sustainability, getting the best value, but also, most importantly, winning new business. We're going to have an open, honest discussion, really sharing a bit different perspectives from our experiences in our businesses. I'm here with Anthony Levy, who started his business 17 years ago in a financial recession. All great businesses start in tough economic times, they say, and you've done very well. I mean, rapid growth, international expansion, and you've gone through some challenging times. So thinking about Brexit, COVID, supply chain shocks, and a hell of a lot of political change. And you're representing Circularity First, who's really focusing on profitable outcomes with sustainability and technology.
Thank you, Andy. It's great to be here and to be talking about how to thrive in times of uncertainty. Look, you've been on a pretty powerful journey yourself. 20 years in the tech industry. You've worked across software, distribution, telco, and IT services. You successfully led, I think it's 2 exits, is that right?
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
And now you're into Smart CT, which is a business that focuses on IT services and solutions across all of Europe. An award-winning organization. It's great to share this platform with you and really to dig into what it's like to run businesses like this.
Yeah, absolutely excited. So it's great to be here with you.
Well, let's get started with episode 2. Lowest cost versus best value. Now, I'm really interested in this topic. In this episode, we're going to talk about cost versus value, look at both sides of the equation, what it means for customers, but what it also means for suppliers, and ask ourselves the question, ultimately, in this highly competitive market, is either side really getting what they want? We both work in marketplaces where we're often tendering or going to blind bids. There's a lot of competition with a lot of pressure. We know the economy's tight and that people are trying to save money. Business cost structures are under pressure. And there's always this challenge of increasing the value but somehow keeping the cost low. I'm particularly interested, Andy, in your business model. When you're providing service solutions for people across their networks, really critical infrastructure, often in bids and tenders, they're trying to treat your services like a commodity. Is that fair? But you're providing a service. So how do you square that round peg? How do you approach that situation, and how do you kind of convince customers of the value?
Yeah, I think value, cost pressure, it's been about for since the beginning of time. The last 2 years have been probably trickier with that, if I'm honest, and really understanding what the core value you're offering, or understand what the customer sees as what's the overall mission they want from procuring that service, having you embedded in their organisation to support them, and under that, well, what are the top 3 things they want to achieve? And you're always told service. Service is always first because it is ultimately about the customer experience. So really rephrasing that into, that service mindset is absolutely super critical. The one thing that I believe in is that, we have dashboards across our office because I want to make sure what is really happening in the organisation. understanding our service level performance of our customers is critical, because that's the first thing everybody says to us. Why do you want the service? We want it performance to our customers, obviously commercially at the right price, but it does become tricky, and really highlighting that value and the impact if nobody turns up. That's the really big piece that we talk about. Our mission is to keep technology connected. We're supporting some huge businesses. If something goes down, they could stop trading, and making sure somebody is there. They're there on time or as quickly as possible to get you back up and running. It's never always the things you first kind of think of, but when it does happen to you and you feel that pain yourself, you know the impact, and you could lose a hell of a lot of money.
So that sort of deeply resonates with me, but it still feels like, even sort of knowing that some customers still prioritize cost in their bid and tendering processes versus the service. Why is that? And I guess perhaps more importantly, what happens when they treat it like that and it goes wrong? What does that look like when they do go for the lowest cost?
Ultimately, sometimes it can work out, because you might never ever get a service call. We're a tech services business, and you are ultimately beholden to getting a call to go out and deliver that service. So if they don't get any calls, it's wonderful, it's great. But when you do, and it's a critical government department, it's a retailer who's in absolute distress, a data center, websites go down, well, that's when they're going to feel it with their customers. And making sure service ethos is right at the heart of that. You've got to keep plugging and pushing away to say, this is what we do an exceptional job at that, and we're just representing our customers. So how do you want to be represented to their then customers? It's absolutely critical.
And sort of, I hesitate here because it's a bit harsh, but have you got any horror stories of where you've spoken to customers and they've worked with a particular partner and it's been bad? How bad does it get when people literally scrape the bottom of the barrel?
Well, I mean, if I take it into my personal life, is my wife went shopping the other day and the retailer went down. Wasn't one that we're supporting, but stuck inside a shop, full shopping trolley, and can't go. Abandoned shopping cart, out the door. Well, that's the kind of impacts that it can have, and that customer, that supermarket, perhaps couldn't generate any money. Okay, it's might be 100 customers though abandoning in their cart, £100 each, and it starts adding up. Yeah. Next time, I'm not going to go there, and those are the kind of areas of doubt that absolutely happen. If you hear about some, perhaps other type of areas in tech, you hear about lots of perhaps cyber events, and who's absolutely at fault for that. Well, if a business is out there saying, I've done the best I can for our customers and my shareholders, but somebody in your supply chain let you down, I don't want to be them.
So that's a really good point. And you talk about the broader supply chain, the broader value. And a minute ago, you talked about public procurement, which I think is a really interesting one. There's been a big shift in public procurement this year. They sort of changed the Procurement Act, and in there they've sort of moved from most economic advantageous tender to most advantageous tender. Now, that's a lot of words, but what they really mean is that adding social value into the mix. And we've seen this actually reflected a little bit more in tenders ourselves this year. People are a bit more focused on sustainability, but equally, where's job creation? Where's solving other social problems? And I think in the IT industry, we've perhaps not always been very good at kind of adding that value. But clearly the signals from government, and we're also seeing it from large enterprises, that's becoming a more important feature in their tenders. Are you seeing that at all? Is that part of what you see in your bids?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think if you look at the cultural piece more broadly, social values becoming more and more important, especially across Europe in the markets that we operate in. And those tenders are getting more and more detailed. So how do you make sure you get that across powerful enough?
Yeah, and I think it's interesting you highlight Europe particularly. I mean, there's a lot of regulation that's sort of been led through Europe, particularly around sustainability, the CRSD and things like that, where people are expecting you to report your carbon emissions and things like that. But I guess if I was to summarize kind of what we've touched on today, so like, no matter what we say, like value-driven purchasing isn't going away. People always want to get great value, but I guess it's about, can you communicate your value clearly? Can you get across the different stakeholders and articulate why it's important? So I think sometimes we forget that the buyers aren't always the ones that would feel the impacts if it goes wrong. So you've got to be able to articulate that more broadly. And we've got to think a bit differently about what we mean by value. It's not just the pounds and the pence. It's like, what else can you do in your solution to make it more sustainable or add social value to make it more valuable for the pounds that people are paying for it?
Yeah, I can add one more thing really on this, is that, when you look at the value piece and you look at the, companies might want to refresh their technology. Well, for big organizations, that's a huge, huge expense. And if you dig a bit deeper into the kind of value that you can offer, well, you might not need to refresh the whole of the estate. Lots of technical people and also from a business outcome want the extra functionality, extra features. But if you get under the skin of it, you can see, well, actually, some parts of that technology needs changing. Others might just need an extension to maintenance to make sure somebody's there to keep it going. And with that new technology, well, there's alternative options. It's not just brand new. You can look at refurbished, and that could still feel like brand new because there might be only a very, very small part of that technology change and still the latest technology. That can be through manufacturer approved or even manufacturer done as well. And I know that's something that in your business you're super interested in.
That's a really good point. Yeah, one of the things we do for customers is do the double whammy of actually implementing something like a Cisco refresh product, which is a fully remanufactured solution that has lower costs, so typically 15 to 20% cheaper, but also massively more sustainable, which can go into that social value component as well.
Great.
Thank you.